Serious. What is the scariest thing to happen to you when you've been home alone? I heard gunshots when I was home alone for the first time as a 12-year-old. Turns out my neighbor was a murderer. At least 12 cop cars and like 2 fire trucks showed up, and I thought it was the end of the world. My dark cat came around the corner from a dark room. Police were chasing a guy, and he ran into our backyard and over the fence to another house. It felt like the helicopter was going to land on the house. Edit. I have a few more stories similar to this. Growing up in South LA was kinda wild. Not sure if this counts. Was working on a farm in northern CA. It was a startup, and I was the only person, at nights, on an isolated 650 acres. After dinner, was walking from the lodge to my cabin. 100 yards plus, it's dark, so all I can see is what my flashlight illuminates, plus a little on the periphery of the main beam. Anyway, walking back, and in the periphery I see red eyes staring at me unblinkingly. I turn the light on it, and all I see is a pale white mass behind the still red eyes. I freak. Takes a little bit to get me jumpy, but this sure as did. Picture a 6 feet 5 inches, 260 pounds man. Now picture him letting out an unbelievably high-pitched scream and straight sprinting into his cabin, 50 yards or so. The next day, I was talking to one of the guys that come up to help out during the day, told him what happened, and he about fell over laughing. I think the sincere terror in my voice as I described the pale monster really drove the funny nail home for him. Well, turns out there's such a thing as albino deer, and just so happens one frequents this property. Nobody thought to warn me beforehand. Edit. Punctuation edit. Thanks for the awards and all the likes. This was exciting to wake up to. This happened many years ago when I was but a youngster. In my suburb, there had recently been a spate of break and enters. Where I live, they tend to happen suburb by suburb. Like, one suburb will get hit a bunch, then there'll be nothing for a while. My family had gone away for the weekend, but I had stayed home because I had work. I was up at midnight watching a James Bond movie, Live and Let Die for those playing at home, with all the lights in the house turned off, and I heard a really sudden and strange thud from my kitchen living area. I instantly knew it was a weird noise. Nothing in the house made any noises like that, so it was immediately suspicious. Just as I was about to get up to go and check it out, I heard it again. That's when I realized it was actually the thudding of the thick glass sliding door from the kitchen to the outdoor patio. As I mentioned, all the lights are off, so I'm making my way through the house turning lights on. When I reached the light switch to turn on the patio light, I hit all of the lights at once, including the light at my front door, which is visible from where I'm now standing. We had those glass panels next to the front door, which I could now also see out of since the light was on. There was nobody at the patio area at this time, but through the glass panels at the front door I saw someone sprint past and out of the yard. Even though I couldn't see any detail, it was unmistakable to see that it was a person running past. It later occurred to me that they were most likely kicking the glass patio door to try and smash it and break in, as I later learned that this is apparently one common method of entry during burglaries. I had initially assumed they were hitting it with something, but a boot would explain the deep hollow thud of the noise better than striking it with something. Was pretty spooky at the time, just that sudden realization of, that is not a normal noise. Kind of crazy what your intuition knows in moments like that. My house came with an alarm that kept track of movement in every room. I set the alarm before bed, but I woke up in the middle of the night because it was alerting me that there was movement going back and forth between my guest bedroom, down the hall, and into my office. My alarm has a robotic speaking voice, so in the dark I'd hear it say, "Movement guest bedroom, movement second floor hallway, movement office," etc. I assume it was a glitch, and nothing to worry about, but I ended up turning that function off. I also heard human footsteps above me in my attic once, home alone while my wife was out of town. But I posted that one already months ago. Clarification edit. My original phrasing is confusing, so I wanted to clarify. I got up immediately and searched through my entire house. Couldn't find anything, figured it was a glitch, and turned the feature off the next day. I didn't ignore the alarm that night. I was chillin' in my bed with my dog watching TV, and I hear a door shut downstairs. I look out the window of my sister's room cause she had a view of the garage, but the garage was empty. I grabbed a pocket knife and crept downstairs. I searched the basement as well as everywhere on the ground floor and found nothing. Went back to my room on edge for the next couple of hours until my family got home. Still don't know what happened, and it couldn't have been wind cause it was winter, so we had all the windows closed. Not that scary, but a door closing when you're home alone and not even 12 is a lil spooky. I was in the front of the house watching TV when one of the bedroom doors down the hallway slammed shut. That's never happened before, and it's never happened since. Investigation turned up nothing, but I still couldn't explain it. I'm just glad it was during the daytime. The carbon monoxide alarm went off edit, since someone asked me what happened. I was a little kid when this occurred. I was home alone, upstairs in my bedroom, and my dad was down the street at a neighbor's house. I had never heard the carbon monoxide alarm go off before, and no one told me about it, so when it went off, it scared the toenails out of me. It was located in our big empty basement, so that only amplified the noise like the world's worst kind of acoustics. It took about a minute to figure out the house wasn't on fire, so I tried to investigate what the alarm could be. I wasn't able to get down the basement steps because it was so loud and painful to my ears to be that close to the noise. Not sure how normal that is, but this motherfucker was loud. Like loudest thing I've ever heard in my life, kinda loud. After a few failed attempts at investigating, I finally got worried enough to run out of the house and look for my dad. I found him talking to one of our neighbors outside in their yard down the street and told him some alarm is going off and I didn't know what to do. He got really annoyed at me like I did something wrong, but he walked with me back home and he realized what it was, so he opened a bunch of windows and went down to check the alarm. I don't know if it was a false alarm or not, but he just put new batteries in it and told me to leave the windows open for a while. He went back to the neighbor's house and left me alone again. About 5 minutes later, the alarm went off again, so I don't think it was a bad battery. I went to get my dad for a second time, and now he was super annoyed. He came home and just took the batteries out of the thing and left again. Father of the year. I didn't die though, so that's cool, but maybe I got brain damage from sneaky carbon monoxide and that's why I'm so dumb. Early teen years. Power went out while I was taking a shower late at night. I got out of the shower already freaked out and looked outside through the window. My house was the only one without power. Stupid teenage brain. This is clearly an attempt on my life reality. House had a weird problem where the power would cut out if the water heater and air conditioner happened to turn on the same time. It had never happened to me before that, but my dad assured me that was the problem once he finally came home. I have always had hallucinations, primarily audio and visual ones. When I turned about 9, I started to be able to tell when it wasn't real, just imagine. Up until then, when I was home alone at night, the walls would breathe and people stomped around the house. I would carefully search the house for other people, but the walls breathing always scared me. Still see it every now and then. Still creeps me out. My siblings decided to play a prank on me when I was in like 3rd grade. They told me I'd be home alone and they left with my nanny. Then, after about a half hour, they started tapping on the windows. It started spaced out, but as time went on, they got more and more frequent and I was terrified. It ended with both of them just banging really loudly on random windows. Then they banged on my door and finally came in and told me what they were doing. I was straight screaming and crying. Easy, worst day of my life. I hate being home alone now, and I am really jumpy, and I hate saying it was traumatic because I feel like that's going overboard. Edit. My siblings are good people. They just didn't know better at the time. The lights turned off all at once while I was in the kitchen. It was pitch black. I heard the door open. For some reason, instead of thinking power outage, my brain went to, someone has cut the power and is coming to kill me. I grabbed the landline, the knife, and was crouched behind the kitchen counter hearing steps come through the house, trying to breathe as quietly as possible. Then I hear my mom go, "Hello? Anyone home?" The power went out by chance at the exact moment she came in the door. That would have been an awkward hospital trip. When I was about 12 years old, I was home alone for the weekend and I was cooking lunch while playing some loud music. Then I kept hearing that something was playing with my music, so I stopped it and heard the tune of "It's a Small World." Just the tune, no lyrics. Kind of like coming from a toy. So, of course, I had to investigate. I checked downstairs and found none, so I went upstairs, and halfway through the stairs, it got louder, so I wasn't about to go there. PLS, I know my way around horror movies. It eventually stopped, but I could never hear "It's a Small World" in the same way ever again. It also didn't help that my bedroom was upstairs, so I did the fastest run that I could do when it was bedtime. To this day, I still don't know what was responsible for that sound. My parents let me walk home from school alone when I was in 4th grade. In my now adult opinion, that's way too young. So I walk home from school. House is empty till about 5 when my parents get home. So I am doing my usual routine. Mountain Dew Code Red, Doritos 3Ds, and Toonami on Cartoon Network. So I am only home for about 3 minutes when I hear a knock at the door. 99% of the time I stay quiet and just wait for whoever to leave. But for whatever reason I actually go to the door and call out. "Who is it?" Stranger dude voice on the other side. "Hey. It's your buddy Mike." I don't have a grown-ass man buddy Mike. I am in 4th grade. My shit goes cold. Heart in my throat. Goosebumps. Cannot move, paralyzed, terrified. Dude says again, "Hey, open the door. We gotta go." And he jiggles the door handle really hard. Then he knocks again, bam, bam, bam. Jiggles the door handle hard again. I am still like 1 foot away from the door. I actually never moved since all of this started because I didn't want him to hear my footsteps. After a minute of silence, I heard a car door close and him drive away. I am still freaked the f out for the next hour. And worst thing was I was now super paranoid about walking to from school because obviously he followed me that day and I had no idea I was being tailed. I was actually at a friend's house when her parents weren't home. We were maybe 10. It was her, my sister, her sisters, and me. We decided to go swimming. There had been a rash of burglaries lately, but mostly garages being broke into. Anyway, we were in the pool when we noticed the kitchen light turn on. It was evening. We assumed her parents so looked in the window to do something stupid to get their attention when we realized we do not know the individual in the house. We hid behind the wall of the pool, above ground, terrified until her parents finally came home. It appeared as though he got spooked as he only ransacked the kitchen and left the garage door wide open when fleeing. On mobile, sorry. Many years ago, when I still lived in my hometown, I worked in hospitality doing split shifts most days. I was young and frequently hungover, so on my 3-hour break I would often go home to nap and refresh. During one of my breaks, I woke up to a guy trying to break in through my bedroom window. I don't think he saw me. I hope he didn't, because God knows what the plan was if he did. I jumped out of bed, completely confused, and just stared at him, kinda shocked. He also seemed shocked and ran away. The thing I find crazy now is my hometown was such a shithole that I didn't even call the cops, because this kind of thing was so common that I just normalized it and had a laugh with friends when I told them about it later that day. I live in a much better place now and realize that this is not normal. For me, I was 12 years old and my dad was at his girlfriend's house. I went into my room to take a shower. I always put a chair under the door handle in my room because it didn't have a lock. My grandma loved giving me porcelain dolls, and she decorated my room with shelves that had porcelain dolls on them. All of the dolls were on their shelves before I got into the shower. When I exited my bathroom, one of the porcelain dolls was 10 feet across the room, face down on the ground. This doll must have flown across the room to have landed where it did. Also, the doll was not broken. Needless to say, my grandma was sad that all of the dolls were packed up and put in the attic for safekeeping. When I was younger, my mom left me and my little brother home alone while she ran to the store. I was in middle school, so old enough to be left home safely for an hour, and my bro was only 2 years younger. Mom leaves and me and my brother are watching TV in the living room, and we see a bunch of smoke from the big bay window facing the front yard shortly after she leaves. We look, and a car has crashed into the ditch that is next to our driveway. I grab the phone and we go out on the porch. I call 911 and give them my address. Then I call my grandma and tell her what happened. Cops and the whole emergency entourage gets there. I go talk to the cops. Mind you, we lived on a state route. It's a 2-lane road, so the entire section of road in front of my house is closed off. My mom rounds the corner of the side road to pull onto the St. RT and sees a ton of cop cars in out driveway and shutting down the road. 2 fire trucks, at least 2 ambulances, and, as any mom seeing this, freaks out. Note about the road and our house. The road is significantly higher than the ditch, so it is entirely possible to miss the wrecked car. Especially when you know you left your kids home alone. They allow her to park in the neighbor's driveway since ours is currently occupied. And we see her sprinting across the yards. The cops intercept her. She sees that me and my brother are okay and is able to calm down enough to talk to the cops. TLDR car crashed in our front yard when I was left home alone. Gave Mom a heart attack from all the emergency vehicles surrounding her house when she tried to drive down the road. It was spooky movie night at a friend's and we were 3 movies deep, just finished watching Dark Skies. I was hungry, so I was like, alright, getting my leftovers, so I went downstairs by myself. When I closed the fridge, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, and when I turned to see what it was, there was a ghostly white, skeletal thing just staring at me from outside the patio, with shimmering hazy lights pulsing behind it. I freaked, dropped my food and run up the stairs nearly in tears, babbling about someone or thing in the backyard. Turns out it was just my own reflection mixed with the lights and steam from the hot tub outside, but I've never been so scared in my life. Not super scary, but one time when I was like 11, I was home alone at night and got a call from the local sheriff's office who told me they just had a dropped 911 call from this number. my house landline, and asked if I was okay. I didn't call them, nobody else was home to call them IDK, it just creeped me out a lot. Late at night when I was a teenager. Must have been around 1 a.m. and I was watching YouTube and my phone has an alert. My phone is connected to the security system, and whenever something happens, it gives an alert for a few seconds before ringing so that you can cancel if you want to. I'm home alone and I decide to cancel the alarm. I slowly get out of my room and creep down with a Renaissance fair knife I bought a couple weeks ago, and I had a thud. It sounded like someone trying to quietly jump down from a higher place without making much noise. Then some footsteps and creaking, now coming from my kitchen. I slowly inch towards my kitchen, adrenaline pumping. Knife in one hand, I turn the light on with the other, prepared to fight for my life. Yeah, turns out it was my cat that I forgot had existed because I was so scared. When I was around 8 or 9, my mom commuted to a major city about an hour per hour and a half away. So I would bring myself home from school, about 100 meters away, lock the door and watch cartoons or play Neopets until she got home. We lived in apartment blocks, and one day one of the older male people in the apartment lost his wallet, and he figured it must have been me. Keep in mind, I've never stolen anything in my life or had any trouble with the law, and I had no clue what he was talking about. He came and banged on the door so aggressively that I jumped out of my skin and was belligerent, demanding I open the door. I rang Mum crying and she jumped on a train to come home, but she was an hour and a half away. She called some friends and they came and got me, and at that stage he had taken a break and gone back to his apartment, but left his dry cleaning there. When Mum got back, she stormed straight to his door and pounded on it like he had done to our door. He came to the door, all shocked, and she demanded to know why he thought it was appropriate to bang on the door for an hour to scare a little girl. He replied that he thought I stole his wallet. Mum asked him if he still thought I did, and he said no, I found it in the car park. She looked like she wanted to kill him and forced him to apologize. Also, in that same apartment block, there was a hairline fracture on the sliding door that we didn't know about. A strong wind blew and shattered the entire window inwards. I was home alone then too. That was scary as f***. Got a hot dog stuck in my throat. I chopped myself in the Adam's apple and it flew out. I was watching some sort of ghost TV show about demons or something in my basement, home alone when I was probably 14 or 15. A turkey walked up to the sliding door and started tapping on the glass. I noped the out of that basement so fast. I don't think I ever watched that show again either. Edit. The show was called A Haunting. Edit 2. My first award. Thanks you. Unibug 1988, glad I could give someone a good laugh. Also love that my most popular comment is about being terrorized by a turkey. Sitting in my parents' farmhouse reasonably deep into the Scottish Highlands, on a farm around 5 miles from the nearest small town overlooking a valley but on a small road that wasn't traveled on much. Anyway, totally alone. Just chilling in the living room and something smashed into the window right beside me. I shat myself. A huge crow, completely out of the blue, flew hard into the window. Double glazed, so didn't break but made a hell of a noise about 3 feet away from me. I was freaking out. How could a crow hit that window in the house, having not avoided the house altogether? I was on edge for hours afterwards. It survived and eventually kind of limped and eventually flew away. Just a random occurrence, but it gave me a serious fright all alone up there on a windy hill. Later on, I could laugh as it left a perfect bird-shaped greasy mark on the window, like something out of a cartoon. Edits for spelling. I slipped and fell and somehow lodged myself stuck crammed in the doorway. I was very stuck for a very long time. One leg bent in an odd position and my wrist had bent backwards. Could not move due to shock and pain at first. Finally wriggled myself loose, but for a moment I was convinced someone was going to find me dead in this weird position. Edit. Clarification. Wasn't alone, but I was a teenager with my girlfriend and my parents weren't home. We were house sitting for my mom who was on vacation with her boyfriend. We're sitting there in the living room, which is right next to the front porch. It's about 12:30 a.m. or so, when we hear loud and heavy footsteps on the porch. Guy goes next to the windows and goes really loud. I'm assuming it's because the curtains are closed. This really spooked us because the couch we were sitting on was near the windows. Had those curtains not have been closed, he could have seen us. Freaked out, we shut off all the lights in the house as the footsteps go away. We look out the windows to see if there's anyone out there, and there's a big burly man with a kind of plastic bag. We live in a small town out in the middle of hillbilly country, so any stores or takeout restaurants are closed at this point in time, so it's a mystery where he got this bag and what was in it. This guy walks down the street, turns around back towards my house and disappears into a parking lot next door to us. Not 2 minutes later, we hear the doorknob to the side door, which was thankfully locked, jiggle. My dog starts going absolutely insane at the noise. He's a small dog with a loud bark, so I think he scared him away, but that was that. We debated calling the cops but never did, and nothing else ever came of it. Edit. We were going to call the cops if he came back, but he never did. We figured he was either drunk or high or something else. This technically doesn't count because I wasn't entirely alone, just my dad at home, but when I was super young, like maybe 8 to 9. I remember I had woken up in the middle of the night to a light in the hall directly across from my room, and I figured someone was in the bathroom. For some reason, this made me need to go to the bathroom, so I got up and walked to the door. Just before I knocked though, something either pinched or poked my butt, and when I whipped around, nothing was there. It's kind of embarrassing for me to say, but I am now 20 years old and I still cannot keep my back turned from any dark rooms or halls, and I have to sleep with my back against a wall. I was laying in bed when the doorbell started ringing multiple times. I thought it was my cousins because they do that a lot, so I stayed in bed since I was lazy and they do have keys to get in. After a few more minutes of ringing, I started to get paranoid and texted my family group chat. The ringing stopped and I heard loud banging noises and the sound of wood being broken. I don't know why, but I got up to check it. The burglar saw me through our frosted glass on the door, yelled, and ran away in his car. Got scared of being alone in the house for a while after. Decided to go downstairs in the middle of the night to get snacks. After I take my first step down the stairs, I passed out. Woke up on the landing unscathed. I must have fallen backwards. IDK how I fell, but if it was the other direction, I would have plunged to death. About 10 years ago, I walked out to my garage to have a cigarette. If you were to walk back into my house at the point I exited, you'd step up a small concrete stair, and from there you'd go right into the kitchen and the rest of the house, or push open the sliding wood door to the basement. The kitchen provides ambient light so you can still see inside. I watched as the door to the basement slid closed by itself, even popping the two halves of the door into its fully closed position, which would have taken a good push as it didn't fit the best. A few seconds later, it flew open. No one else was in the house, including pets. I have no idea how it could have happened. No drugs, alcohol were involved. Scared the hell out of me. I also walked out one night into the garage, opened the door to the backyard, and, looking left, saw something attached to our house fly away so fast it didn't make sense. The weirdest thing is it didn't look like it took flight. Instead, it looked like something pulled off along a parabolic curve. I can't make sense of that one either, and it still scares me to this day. Once while I was home alone, I had been warned not to answer the door for anyone, or I might get taken away. One sales guy had been banging on the door repeatedly for the last 6 minutes. I guess I hadn't muted the TV fast enough. He screamed, "I know you're home alone in there." I about died. Edit. Wow, this blew up. Thanks. I was about 7 or 8. Edit 2. Thank you for the silver and the yikes. My first 2 awards ever. Edit 3. Some of you were wondering. I just waited until the guy left. Told my parents what happened that night. They freaked. I was probably 9 years old. My sister was 6. We had a babysitter who was 12, so alone in the sense that no adults were around. Jackass that I was, I squirted bug spray on my sister and she chased me in retaliation. I ran through some French glass doors to get away from her. She went for the knob and missed. Her arm went through one of the glass panes. She cut herself so deep, you could see muscle, tendons, and bone. It looked like a shittily cut piece of raw meat, since that's basically what it was. The babysitter held a piece of cloth on my sister's arm until my mom came home, called her right away, and took my sister to the ER. She didn't hit an artery, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but it was scary as at the time. Got 60 stitches out of it. My girlfriend and I both travel a lot for work, pre-COVID, so it's not unusual for only one of us to be home on any given week. Last fall she was in San Francisco and I was home alone for a few days. We live in an apartment on the top floor of a building. Above us is a roof with a deck available to everyone. Middle of the night I get up to use the bathroom and on the walk back to bed I look over to the study. There's a sliding door in the study leading to a balcony. I immediately stop dead in my tracks. I see the outline of a person standing on my balcony, facing me. I run over, hit the lights, grab a knife from the knife block and start dialing 911. The person is a kid, no more than 16. He sees me hit the lights, grab a knife and my phone, and he immediately grabs the railing on my balcony and flings himself over. I run over, assuming I just watched someone kill themselves, only to see him safe and sound on the balcony below me. He then hurdles off that balcony. He's jumping from floor to floor. He hits the parking lot in the back of our building safely and then sprints off. Cops finally come and break up a party on the roof. Turns out he was just a drunk friend of someone on the second floor and got dared to do it. Also shout out to my dog for being asleep 15 feet from the balcony and not doing anything. Well, my house was sort of out farther away from town. We had neighbors, but they were few and far between. There was a hiking trail opening across the street from our driveway, which was very long and can't be seen from the trail. My room had a large window facing out to the driveway. Anyway, I was home alone, cleaning my room and singing "We Are the Champions" extremely loudly, as well as playing it on my TV. Looked up and suddenly see a man power walking up my driveway very quickly. It's obvious no one is home but me since there aren't any cars in the driveway. So I ran to the front door, which was open because it was hot AF outside, and locked it, and closed and locked my window. Turns out bro friend did not like that. I called 911 because he was still approaching my house, and I was getting scared by his demeanor. and while on the phone with the 911 operator, he started banging on my front window by the door, and then the door itself. He tried kicking in the door, and tried breaking the window. I went and hid in my mom's closet, because it locked from the inside only, with a knife until the cops showed up. By the time they showed up, he was gone, and there were hand and shoes prints all over the door and front window, and some handprints on my bedroom window. They found him about an hour later walking up and down my street. He told them that he heard my pretty singing voice and just wanted to say hi. He was also drunk, but admitted to being sober at the time of the incident and started drinking after I rejected him. He also told them that he planned to come in and have some fun with me after he found that I was home alone, and that he was waiting for nighttime to come back. So yeah, had a lot of nightmares about that one. TLDR. Man tried to break in because he heard me singing, couldn't get in, gave up, then went and got drunk. Police found and arrested him an hour later. Then he admitted to them that he wanted to rape me. Edit. Thanks for the gold. It's my first. I really didn't think this would get so much attention. I was in my basement where the computer was playing some game, probably RuneScape, and heard someone pull into the driveway, naturally assuming it was my mother who was coming home from work. I heard the screen door open, but when no one opened the lock on the actual door, I started to go upstairs and I saw a pair of legs go by the window. While the basement was underground, there was about a foot that popped up above ground level and had 2 windows. I go upstairs and see 2 dudes in my backyard looking at the windows and talking about the door was locked. It was an attempted home robbery. We had been broken into a few times at that point and had everything locked, but 10-year-old me was terrified. Edit. Because you guys keep asking, they just left, nothing happened. No Home Alone I did not get killed, I am very much alive. There had been a scratching in my ceiling for a while, and my landlady was dragging her feet over having it looked into. One night, around 2 a.m., the scratching became so bad it woke me up from a dead sleep. I tried to reassure myself that whatever it was couldn't really get through to me, and I would be fine until I could call my landlady the next day and really press the issue. Then some debris fell from my ceiling. Whatever was up there had managed to dig a small hole into my room. I screamed and heard some scurrying away from my approximate location. Grabbed any stuff I needed for the next day, got the out of there, shut the door tight behind me, and slept on the couch. I called my landlady first thing in the morning, and she had someone come while I was at work that day to check it out. A mama raccoon had managed to get her way into the space between the roof and my ceiling and had given birth to a litter of kits. The guy speculated that the kits were getting old enough to start wrestling around, and that was likely what led to the hole in my ceiling. Luckily, it was just small, the size of a quarter, so there weren't any angry raccoons hanging out in my room when I got home. They were able to safely trap and release the whole little family, but I still started hunting for new apartments ASAP. I move into my new place on May 1st. I was pretty young at the time, probably 10 to 11. My parents went to get groceries and let me stay home to watch the TV. Then suddenly a dude just runs up to my house and starts knocking on my door. We live on a one-way street. Maybe a quarter of a minute later, a cop car pulls up and they beat the shit out of the guy, put him in the back of the car and drove away. I guess the criminal was trying to escape but did not think there would be no exit whatsoever except through someone's house. Scared the living out of me. I woke up from a dead sleep, sitting straight up in bed, heart pounding, absolutely convinced someone was in my home. I spent the next 20 minutes slowly searching my very small basement suite, where I live alone, with 911 pre-dialed on my phone. No one was there and my door was still locked. no windows open, etc. Still not sure what woke me up, but I've never been so paranoid in my life. ETA. This happened, like, a year ago. I'm in my 30s. This just happened last week. I woke up to someone in my house. Walking up the stairs to my bedroom, it was about 1 p.m., and I work third shift, so I was sleeping. In my haste, I didn't grab my bat. I whip open my door and it's my ex-best friend, whom I've blocked on every social media site. She starts yelling at me for not responding to her and how she misses me. IDK, what scared me more? The split second I realized there was an intruder. Or that someone I knew would just take it upon themselves to force me to talk to them by trespassing. So it all started when I was taking a I started hearing footsteps around my house, back and forth, just wandering the house. I texted my whole family trying to figure out if anyone had come home early. Nope. All were at least 30 minutes, an hour away. We lived in a very rural area, so there I am, still on my ass, too scared to even wipe because I don't want to make a noise. Too scared to stand up and lock the bathroom door because I didn't want them to know I was in there. I was so scared I was worried whoever was walking around would hear my heartbeat, it was beating so loudly. Footsteps continue for at least 25 minutes and I hear a door open and close. I stay on the toilet cause I'm still terrified. Ass is sore at this point. Finally, my neighbor bursts in calling my name with a gun. I go outside with him, didn't flush, and the police arrive and scope out the place. I still think about how the cops must have seen my in that toilet. We never found out who was in there or why. They didn't take anything and seemingly just scoped out the place for half an hour, then dipping before anyone came to the rescue. We lived outside a rural town, and my mother always told my father not to leave me home unsupervised because it was a 20-minute drive from town if some accident were to occur. Anyway, my dad was a completely irresponsible parent, and so he ignored that advice and instead left me at home by myself at age 7. However, before he left to go back to a meeting, he explained how to load and his 12-gauge shotgun under his bed with buckshot and told me if anyone comes to the door and tried to break in, shoot them. Fast forward a couple hours. My mother calls him and asks how everything is going. He says I'm home alone. She loses her mind and rushes out of work to come home and get me. In her rush, she forgets her house keys. So she gets home and starts banging on the front door. I didn't hear her voice at all, so being the obedient child I am, I go into my parents' room, load the gun and bring it towards the door. I it and I don't know if my mom heard it or what, but she suddenly stopped banging and yelled my name instead. It's probably the only reason she's alive today. I was really scared before I knew it was her, but I assumed my dad was smart and told me the right thing to do. I was home alone at my dad's while he was working nights, making my dinner and everything. I was probably about 14 or 15 at the time. I was watching TV while my potatoes were cooking when I heard something slam into the front door. I grab my pocket knife and check it out, nothing. About 10 minutes later, I hear another bang on the front door, repeat, and still nothing. Really freaked me out cause we'd had a few houses get broken into on my street. Turns out I didn't put enough holes into my baked potatoes and they exploded in the oven. Opening parenthesis. It was about 8:30 at night and I heard the front door open. I called out from my room asking why my mom and dad were home only a half hour after they left for dinner. I almost shit my pants and straight up jumped out of my bedroom window when a random male voice replied, "What? There's somebody in here." Turns out it was somebody who got hired to check on one of our neighbor's dog when they were on vacation and he got the wrong house address, but the raw fear that gripped me when I heard his voice still gives me nightmares. Was home alone one night and it was close to Halloween in 2015. Loud knock on the front door. I was eating dinner, so I slowly but cautiously go to the front door. Open it up and there is blood all over the front porch and no one there. Kind of freaked out a bit, thought it was a prank. Called the cops because what the ya know. They said they would send someone there. They called back and said someone was on a bike and fell and was bleeding bad and was going door to door asking for help. I missed the person, but one of my neighbors helped them out apparently. Crazy. Probably pretty lame compared to most stories on here. Was working pretty late, 2 a.m., on my computer when I get an alert from my security camera that detected motion. I checked it and there was a person staring into my apartment window in full view of where I was working. I closed the computer, turned off the lights and went into the bathroom for a bit. Turns out being extra paranoid when someone is staring into your apartment at 2 a.m. isn't a good combination. I checked the camera memory and the guy was there for 20 minutes, just real casual. Called the cops and the kid ran away and came back an hour later. Haven't seen him since. I was 15 or 16. It was a Friday night and my parents were having dinner with some friends. I was supposed to stay alone at home for 3 or so hours. A middle-aged guy got into the garage and was trying to break into the house. He was carrying a bat, pipe, something, was angry as heck, and kept yelling my dad's name. He broke windows and a door and damaged my mom's car. Luckily, he didn't get inside. I was so scared I didn't even think of calling the police. I remember how my hands were shaking and how I was trying hard not to cry. I called my mom and my parents rushed home. They called the police on their way. Police arrived a few minutes later. Turns out this man was married to one of my dad's coworkers. She was cheating on him and she told her husband the other guy was my dad in order to protect the real other guy. For as long as I live, I will never forget this. Kind of long. July 2010. Staying alone in my grandparents' farmhouse. Built 1885, Ontario, Canada. They all left that day and I stayed behind because I was moving to Alberta and wanted to have some time to myself in the house before leaving. I could take the bus home to the city, so it wasn't a big deal, plus it was good that I did it as my grandparents sold the farm a couple years ago. Back to the scene. I'm alone in a 125-year-old house on 100+ acres of land in the middle of nowhere. Growing up, we all heard stories of ghosts in the house and on the property, blah blah blah, you know how it is. For anyone unaware, July in Ontario farm country is hot, so I was laying in my boxers with all the windows open, sweating my ass off trying to sleep. While spread eagle on my back, I was overcome with a cold shiver that ran from my hair to my toenails and I could feel hands on my arms and legs. Just as I was about to get up, those hands I felt shoved my arms to my side and shoved my legs closed. I was frozen for a minute or maybe longer, I couldn't tell. When I could get up, I scrambled to close all the windows and turn on all of the lights. Once I was done doing all of that, I ran back up to the bedroom and sat on the bed thinking I'm fucked. No way that just happened . I could hear a noise downstairs, so I opened the door and I could hear all of the cupboards and drawers in the kitchen being opened and slammed shut. I screamed at the top of my lungs, enough, and then it was dead silent. I mean dead silent. I went downstairs. Lit all the lights still on, deadbolts and locks still on, doors and windows still closed. I don't remember if I slept that night, but I have never been back to the property since. Grandparents told me it was a ghost named Beatrice, and she was probably mad I was still there cause she probably enjoyed the peace and quiet after everyone left. That's my story. Not completely home alone, it was myself and my younger siblings. I was working late one night and had told my brother and sister then when I got back we could order pizza. I got home at around 2130 and walked through into the front room where they were sat waiting, both looking pretty confused. They told me they thought I'd already come home because they heard the front door open, followed by me running up to my room. Creepy enough. I had a quick check upstairs, nothing there, so proceeded to order the pizza. Now, I don't fully believe in ghosts. I've always thought that there could be something, but I'm the kind of person who has to have a logical reason for everything. Anyway, we're sat waiting for our food to arrive when one of our 3 dogs sits up with his ears pricked and essentially watches somebody walk into the room and sit in the empty armchair. Then, dog 2 of 3 starts growling, staring at the armchair. Dog 2 of 3 is a rescue and is very wary of people he doesn't know, and was acting exactly how he would towards a stranger. Dog 3 then plods into the room chilled as anything and goes to jump into his favorite armchair. He gets to it and stops, staring directly at face level as if somebody is sat there. At this point, I'm sure you can imagine we're all freaking out. He just sits beside the chair growling, and he's definitely not comfortable with whatever sat there. My siblings and I have all frozen. There's a horrible feeling in the room. We're all sat staring at the armchair on edge when the front door opens. My mom had come home early, and the dogs all run through to see her. I don't think I slept properly again in that house. This seemed to have tied in with a few other creepy things which happened, but I won't go into that here. Edit. Grammar. First time I was ever home alone, an earthquake hit, and being a 10-year-old who had never experienced an earthquake, I had no idea what was happening and lost my shit. The scariest thing that happened to me I didn't know actually happened until the following day. I lived in an apartment in a not-so-good part of a dangerous city with my boyfriend who worked nights. One day, our friend came over and called me to let him in our building in a hurry. Turns out this guy had been crouched by my car in the parking lot and had approached our friend and closed in on him. My friend pulled out a weapon and the guy ran off. Upstairs, I noticed that the guy had left a green bundle near my car and assumed he would be back for it. It made me uncomfortable, so I suggested we call the cops. Not 5 minutes after, a cop showed up to ask where the guy had gone. SWAT, K9, and about 10 cars showed up and swarmed our area. Turns out the guy had escaped from county the night before with 2 other guys. He was in jail for assault with a deadly weapon and repeated domestic violence offenses. He had climbed the fence in the yard behind our building where our landlord kept his camper, broken into the camper, and stayed there the night before. He had stolen all the electronics out of it as well as a butcher knife and was trying to break into my car before my friend showed up. I had been alone the night before and had taken my dog down to the yard to go to the bathroom. I noticed that the barbed wire on the top of the fence had fallen down, and my dog was nervous. But I